Clash Royale has always offered special deals to players willing to spend a couple extra dollars on their favorite game, and usually, since they are meant to be offers, they're pretty good value, but sometimes, Clash Royale makes an offer so bad that it would be better to just avoid it and use the money for something that's better. From the first video that I made on this topic, I realized that I barely scratched the surface of bad Clash Royale offers, so in this video, I want to explore even more bad Clash Royale offers to attempt to find what is the worst offer in Clash Royale history. Starting off the video strongly, this is an offer that was made right after the Pass Royale 2.0 was introduced. It was basically offering some of the more valuable items from the old Pass Royale. Starting with the deal on the left, Clash Royale was offering an epic book of cards and 200 banner tokens for $9. Considering that banner tokens can be unlocked for free, although painstakingly slow, and the epic book of cards can be purchased from the season shop or even could have been gotten for free from the old Pass Royale, there's not really anything that makes this deal stand out. Even if we consider that 200 banner tokens can be purchased for $2, which is kind of fair since no one really knows the true value of banner tokens, it suggests that a single upgrade of an epic card by one level was worth $9. $9 for a single upgrade. Absolutely terrible. I don't think I have to go into too much detail on how bad this next deal is. For $8, which keep in mind is more expensive than the old Pass Royale, Supercell wanted to sell a measly 3 legendary wildcards. That's barely enough to even upgrade a legendary card to tournament standard, assuming you had already unlocked a legendary card. And the deal doesn't even cover the gold cost for this upgrade, and worst of all, if you use this conversion rate where a legendary wildcard is worth about $2.67, it then suggests that to max out a single legendary card after you've unlocked it, it would cost you $112, which is absolutely terrible, but this doesn't come close to how bad the next deal is. This deal was available while the Phoenix was absolutely broken. For $13, Supercell was selling 3 Phoenixes and 5,000 gold. It was advertised to players who were below the requirements of the arena where you unlock the Phoenix, which is Arena 12. This adds to how bad the offer was, since it allowed Supercell to bump up the price since they were clearly targeting players who couldn't be bothered to grind to the arena where you unlock the Phoenix, and didn't mind paying extra to get it, so Supercell could have made it as outrageous as they wanted. Starting with the gold, not only is it only enough to even upgrade a newly unlocked Phoenix to level 2, if we consider 5,000 gold to be worth $2.50, it then suggests that 3 Phoenixes are worth $10.50, which is also absolutely terrible, since it implies that a single Phoenix costs $3.50, meaning to max out a Phoenix with this conversion rate would have cost you $150 for a single legendary card. What makes me even sadder is that players actually bought this deal, since the deal had achieved what it intended to do, which was show lower arena players that just because they can't unlock the Phoenix, it doesn't stop them from buying it, even though it's a terrible deal for them. You can count on Supercell for making bad champion wildcard offers, and this one isn't any different. For over $130, Supercell was selling 500,000 gold and 15 champion wildcards. If you remember the bad champion wildcard deal from the previous video, even if we doubled that to get 16 champion wildcards to meet the wildcard requirement for this deal, that is €96 for 16 champion wildcards, meaning that 15 champion wildcards would be worth €90. But remember that this is already with one of the worst conversion rates in the game's entire history. Even with that, it then implies that 500,000 gold is worth €30, which is $33. I don't think I need to explain how truly bad that is. You can buy 500,000 gold from a set of Supercell special offers that show up in the shop every day and get even more items that help progression for literally a max of $15. So overall, even if we consider these absolutely terrible conversion rates, there's nothing that makes this deal look good in any way. Like the previous Phoenix deal, this deal was running while the Phoenix was absolutely broken. I guess Supercell thought players would overpay for a broken card because this shop offer appeared shortly after the Phoenix was released, and similarly to the previous Phoenix deal, it was advertised to lower arena players, but this deal was worse in every way. For $7.50, Clash Royale expected players to buy a single Phoenix and a chess key. Aside from how unrelated a chess key is for this deal, I still look at this deal and wonder who on earth would buy this, even if we assume a chess key to be equivalent to 144 gems, which is equivalent to 24 hours of unlock time. And if we also use the 500 gem shop offer costing $5, the max value for a chess key can only be $1.44. This implies that Supercell was charging a whopping $6.06 for a single Phoenix. Since it would have taken 43 cards to max a legendary in 2022, this would suggest that maxing out the overpowered October to November 2022 Phoenix would have costed a whopping $260 for one card that isn't even a champion. Let that sink in. This next deal is similar in value to the previous deal but feels so much worse for a variety of reasons. While you could argue that legendary chests were worth a lot more in the earlier days of Clash Royale, this deal wasn't even that old. It was presented to players in September of 2020, and by that time, legendaries weren't as rare as they used to be. Starting with the emote, it wasn't even a limited emote, which means it would have been available in the shop only a couple of months after this offer, but even if we consider it to be worth 400 gems rather than 250 gems, then this players most likely would have paid for it since it would be exclusive for a couple of months. 400 gems translates to $4 US. This then implies that the legendary chest in this deal is worth $9 US. $9 for a single random legendary is so much worse than at least knowing what legendary you were gonna get. Imagine if it was already a legendary that you maxed out. You would have paid $9 and only gotten 40,000 gold. Maxing out a legendary with this conversion rate back in 2020 to level 13 would have costed you $207, and this is assuming you got the same legendary every time. And to top it all off, Clash Royale added a 3 times value multiplier to the deal, so I guess they thought it was worth almost $40 US. In the first part, I mentioned a book of cards sale as one of the worst offers in the game's entire history, since it was upwards of 6,000 gems for a single book of legendary. However, after the magic update hype died down, Clash Royale would once again make a similar book sale shop offer. In this, they were charging 2,500 gems for a legendary book of cards, 1,850 gems for an epic book of cards, and 500 gems for a common book of cards. The common book of cards, while it was the best value of the lot, was still not that good. 500 gems is the equivalent of $5 US, so I can kind of see the value in the common book of cards, but the other two are terrible. Starting with the epic book of cards, if someone had purchased 2,500 gems for $20 US, then an epic book of cards would have been worth around $15 US. Even if we consider a max epic book of books with this conversion rate, spending $15 US on a single upgrade of an epic card by one level is absolutely terrible. And since there are 29 epic cards in Clash Royale, upgrading all of these cards to level 14 from level 13 would cost you $435 US for one level, and it gets worse. A legendary book of cards would have been valued at exactly $20, so once again, $20 US for a single upgrade of a single card is horrible. It's a good thing that Clash Royale has stopped doing these book sales with gems, because it's one of the worst ways to spend gems in the game, but the offers get worse. This one is one of the most painful to look at. Even though it's not a shop offer, it's still a trade offer that the game has had. The conversion of a champion to 500 elite wildcards. This was the old conversion rate for champions before it was reworked to 4,000 elite wildcards. But just seeing 500 elite wildcards for the most valuable card rarity in the game just hurts, especially as a free-to-play player. To understand truly how bad this offer really is, I should probably go over the value of elite wildcards. Around the same time this old conversion rate was still used, Supercell made the infamous Elite Wildcard shop offer, which had 3 options to get Elite Wildcards. They were 5,000 Elite Wildcards for 150,000 gold, 12,500 Elite Wildcards for 3,000 gems, and finally 50,000 Elite Wildcards for 11 to 13 US dollars. So I'll just consider $12 as a compromise. Before this update, when you got extra champions, you would have gotten 40,000 gold, which in itself was an amazing value, since the way the overflow cards used to work was it would give you half the gold value of the actual value of the card if you had bought it from the shop. For instance, a champion would have costed 80,000 gold if you bought it from the shop, but if you got it from a chest as overflow, it would give 40,000 gold. But elite wildcards were promised to be better value, but were they really? Starting at the best value of the lot, which was 5,000 elite wildcards for 150,000 gold. Getting 500 elite wildcards would mean you'd get the equivalent of 15,000 gold. So already, Clash Royale had made champions worth much less with this offer. In fact, champions lost 60% of their value from this one interaction, but it gets much worse. The next best deal of the offer was $12 for 50,000 elite wildcards. If this was the case, since 500 elite wildcards is 1% of 50,000, it then implied that 500 elite wildcards was worth a measly 12 cents, which also meant Supercell saw champions as being worth only 12 cents. 12 cents for the rarest cards in the game is embarrassing. If we make a fair assumption that a single champion card is worth $1 US, which is really generous considering this was a shop offer, it then implies that champions lost a whopping 88% of their value due to elite wildcards that cost real money. And the worst out of all the elite wildcard offers, 3,000 gems for 12,500 elite wildcards. Considering 500 elite wildcards is 4% of 12,500, it suggests that 500 elite wildcards is worth 120 gems, which means it suggests that a champion is worth 120 gems, which in itself is pretty good until you realize that spending 3,000 gems for 12,500 elite wildcards is probably one of the worst investments you can make with gems in Clash Royale's entire entire history. Overall, aside from how underwhelming it is to get 500 elite wildcards, considering 50,000 is the target of a level up of 1 card to level 15, I would definitely consider this as one of the worst possible trades for a champion in the game's entire history. This next deal is infamous as being one of the worst deals in Clash Royale history. I'm sure you can already guess what it is, the Evolutions launch package. Back in June of 2023, for $100 US, Clash Royale was selling 4 newly released Evolutions, 4 common book of cards, 1 book of books, 5,000 common wildcards, and 250,000 gold. In terms of value, this deal wasn't absolutely terrible. There certainly are worse deals on this list, but what makes this deal especially bad was the timing. Since Evolutions were released alongside level 15, the player base was already furious at Clash Royale, since level 15 would mostly benefit pay-to-win players. But to top it all off, once players logged into Clash Royale and checked the shop, they were greeted with this shop offer. There are so many things that make this shop offer bad. To start, this deal was shown to everyone, which means it suggested that even Arena 1 players could have access to Evolutions, rubbing more salt in the wound of players, since, once again, pay-to-win was being promoted to Clash Royale players. Secondly, $100 is a lot of money. For that price, you could buy multiple AAA titles. It kind of showed to Clash Royale players that Evolutions was shown to be restricted to only the richest of Clash Royale players, which once again promotes excessive pay to win. Additionally, since Evolutions at the time were considered to be overpowered since they made regular cards overpowered for the same elixir cost, locking it behind a paywall once again showed players that the game had become a complete pay to win mess, and the nail in the coffin for the shop offer was what would happen after it was gone. Right after this deal left the shop, Clash Royale would not only nerf the Evolutions, but they also made shop offers for specific evolution shards, and they were very cheap. In fact, for each evolution, Clash Royale would have charged maybe $10 which meant that if the players that paid $100 had waited maybe a week or 2 weeks, they could have gotten literally the same offer for $50 from a combination of shop offers. It's hard to even defend Supercell for this offer. It's really bad how they made it absolutely overpriced just to provide pay-to-win players a sense of specialty, just to turn their backs on them a week later by offering the same offer for half the price and nerfing the evolutions that they paid full price for. In a way, they kind of abandoned both pay-to-win and free-to-play players with this one shop offer. I would definitely rate this as the worst shop offer on this list if it weren't for the fact that for $100, even though the deal was still terrible value, it's not the worst value offer on the list. But the fact that this video isn't even over yet shows truly how bad the next deal is. This deal makes the Evolution launch package special look good. For $6, Clash Royale wanted players to buy a single Evolution shard, and the fact that they had 6 available means they knew that they could have bundled them together, but thought they could sell them separately. To break down this deal, if you spent $6 for each Evolution shard, you would have spent $36 for each Evolution, and if you wanted to buy all the Evolutions, you would need to spend $144. But what makes this deal even worse is the fact that the shop offer was actually made right after the Evolutions all received their first round of nerfs, meaning not only were these versions of evolved cards weaker than the day 1 version of the Evolutions, the fact that they were more expensive, and not just by a bit, kind of makes you wonder what Supercell was thinking when they designed an offer like this. The fact that this would cost you $44 more than the Evolution launch deal, without including the book of books and common books as well as the gold and wild cards, and selling Evolutions that were already nerfed, makes this deal worse in every way. Another thing I should note is, while this is quite insignificant given the terrible value of the deal is, I would assume buying Evo shards separately would be mostly super annoying, since you would have to click it 6 times and then complete the payment 6 times. Overall, this deal was unthoughtful and terrible value in so many ways. The Clash Royale player base likes to joke about how Supercell would charge more for something than its actual price since they have a tendency to be quite greedy, but despite all these jokes, Supercell would actually go ahead and make one of these offers, 500 gems for a lightning chest. There are so many reasons why this offer was bad. The most obvious one is that the lightning chest is already a permanent item in the shop that costs 250 gems, so this deal is more expensive and offers the same chest but also isn't limited to 5 items like this deal was. But it gets way worse. Gems have actually become much more valuable than real life money, since you can't buy real life money with gems, but you can buy gems with real life money, so free-to-play players would only be able to buy shop offers with gems. But at the same time this offer was available, Supercell had nerfed masteries to give less gems. This meant that the sources of gems for free-to-play players had reduced drastically, since masteries was such a good and reliable way to get gems. So while we could say that pay-to-win players could have bought this for $5, which keep in mind is still overpaying for it since it's worth a max of $2.50, even even if free-to-play players bought this deal, they would have probably lost more value than $5 if that makes sense. And what scared me even more about this offer was, even though this offer seems obviously terrible, there was actually genuine discussion online of whether or not this deal was good, which means there were players that bought this terrible deal. Every deal on this list, even though it was bad in terms of value, it's difficult to calculate the true value of them since they are usually in bundles, but in the case of this deal, it was clearly more expensive than the existing lightning chest in the shop, and it was also a scam. For me, it's definitely the worst deal in this video. Supercell could have added a half times or a negative times 2 value in the top right corner and it would be accurate. Absolutely scummy behavior from Supercell. Seeing offers like this kinda makes you wonder how such a big game like Clash Royale is declining in the way they are. I hope you did enjoy this video though. Thanks for watching.